Fabi.
Yeah, I wanted to go a bit deeper into what Robert said, which is absolutely correct, that the structure is potentially uh, a bit weak for both sides. So let's say after b6, cd5, which white at some point should play, cd5, white actually wants to trade queens here. Which
Why?
is,
What's the difference if the queens are off?
um, well, it's a bit like what black's bishop is aiming at white's king. I mean, black's king looks like the safer one between the two. And endgames, surprisingly, white is the one with the better chances because that d5 pawn is more of a weakness than c3. And so let's say white plays queen to b5 here, which I think might actually happen. Queen to d7, because knight to d7 is tactically
there's
a bit hanging. Let's say after queen to c6. Bishop is in serious trouble.
that's so funny. In the middle of the board, the bishop is
Trapped?
It's trapped.
Because the queen can go to protect it, but you lose a knight.
Yeah.
So
Here black loses.
This is so optically pleasing. I don't know. That's a weird thing to say, but this is like the bishop can't go to any square, and if it goes to b8, you lose. Well, you don't actually lose the rook because of the check.
Well, there's bishop a3 coming in, and it
Okay,
does end up being lost for black.
Wow. Okay, this is amazing.
So
Okay.
black plays queen to d7, and this was white's point that he's sort of forcing the queen trade. White takes. White can play, let's say, a4. At some point, it's just useful to, let's say, get some space on the queen side. And if black attacks the c3 pawn, it looks like that's a bit of a weakness. But white can simply play bishop to d2. And white's plan is to bring the king to d3. King f1, e2, d3. And then the knight will maneuver itself, because black actually doesn't have much counterplay, to e3. Usually it'll go via e1. White will play g3.
Ooh. Okay.
Or it can go via h4. g3, knight h4, knight g2, e3. And that d5 pawn, the surprising thing is that sometimes we think about good bishops because they're not on the color complex of the, let's say, weak pawn. But sometimes a pawn, if it can't be defended by a bishop, becomes more of a weakness. And in this case, if black had a bishop on the light squares, then that pawn would no longer be a weakness because it couldn't really be attacked. But this way, that pawn is forced basically to be defended by a knight or by a rook. And by a rook is very awkward, so probably by a knight, which means that pawn is a serious weakness. If we imagine very long-term plans, like king to d3, knight coming to e3, then white can play rook e to b1, rook to b5. That pawn is actually a very serious long-term weakness. So this kind of position, and we saw queen b5 on the board, this position is a bit better for white. It's not a disaster or anything, but
well, we're getting exactly what you predicted on the board, and my apologies for going full Hikaru there, chat. Never go full Hikaru.